Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Beth, and this is going to be the second. I break everything. This is going to be the second video in my kind of 12 days of palette series. So I'm trying to actually use a lot of the palettes I've purchased over the last couple months, I guess. So for today, we are talking about the Pat McGrath Luminous Legends Mega Eyeshadow Palette. So this is her holiday palette for 2024. And how I've been kind of structuring these videos is I do a little bit of like talking head type portion like this, where I talk about the palette and that kind of thing, give you my thoughts. I also have a dedicated swatching portion and then an application or demo portion. So in my last video, I compared the Anastasia Sugar palette to last year's Charlotte Tilbury palette. So if you'd like to see how those compare, I'll have that linked up above and down below for you. But this video I structured a little bit differently in that I am filming this portion before I have swatched the entire palette, but after I have done the demo. And the demo I filmed quite a few hours ago. It is now 6:37. So six and a half hours. So I have some wear information to share with you, which will impact kind of how I feel about this palette. So with that being said, I will cut to the swatches and then the demo. And the demo I'll speed through and do either music or voiceover depending on how I feel. And then we'll meet back here for kind of my final thoughts. All right, so let's do some swatches. So this is the outer packaging, mirrors the interior, and all of that information. So I think I'm going to do this by column because that's how the swatch names are organized. So, okay, so for the first column, we have Golden Muse, which is a pale gold. Coral Caress, which is a neutral coral. This one doesn't look very corally to me. And then finally, Honey Nectar is a pale bronze with gold pearl. So those are the first three shades. Next up, we have Rose Afterglow, which is a pink with gold pearl, like so. Bordeaux Brilliance is a burgundy with iridescent pearl. And then Celestial Cerulean is a sparkling deep blue. Yeah, and all of these, they're pretty kind of thick and chunky. That one applied very nice and smoothly though. So those are the next three. So for the middle column, we have Flame Fatale is a golden copper. Orchid Opulence is an iridescent magenta. And Gilded Bronze is a bronze with pink pearl. I'm not sure how much of a pink pearl there is really, but and then the fourth row we have, so this is where I run into a problem because I think on the packaging, this one is called Sunkissed Rose, is a mauve rose, if you can see that. It's labeled something differently on the website, which is kind of frustrating and a little bit of a like quality control issue in my opinion. So I'm going off of the shade names on the palette. So that is Sunkissed Rose. Moonlit Mist is an iridescent pastel turquoise. And then Lunar Luxury is another shade that is misnamed. So Lunar Luxury is what is called on this packaging. And again, very, very chunky formulations here. I might have to do the last 3 on my hand. But those are the first 12. Maybe I can just fit them on the side of my arm. So this shade is Stardust Peony, which is an iridescent coral rose. Platinum Lilac is another shade that is something different. And then finally, Sable Seductress is a velvet matte brown. Platinum Lilac was a platinum lavender. So I think that's 3 shades in total that have different names. So I'll just try to, I guess, fit them down the side. So pretty shades. Again, like I think these are all kind of a thicker formulation. I wonder if in part these were formulated to swatch better than maybe they apply on the eyelids. So we'll talk about the application and the wear. But can I zoom in here? But just to give you some kind of close-up pictures here. So yeah, so very pretty shades, but I just don't know whether this is like the best buy for the holiday season. So one thing I did want to do here is just kind of compare some of these more icy, cool toned shades. So we had a few different palettes that came out this holiday season that featured some of those shades. So we have the Dior Backstage, the Anastasia Sugar palette, which I've already filmed with, and I included this Charlotte Tilbury Beautyverse in that video as well. So just take a quick look at all of them. The Anastasia shades were a little bit on the kind of chunkier side as well, especially that blue. So let's just compare, I guess I'll compare this cerulean shade to this Dior shade. So yeah, those are not going to be very similar at all. The Dior is more of a matte. And as far as the kind of lighter blue, I'll just go ahead and swatch both these, I guess. So this one is the Pat McGrath, and then 2 from Anastasia. And then we have the silvery blue from Charlotte Tilbury. So yeah, I mean, kind of similar vibes in some ways, but they're not going to be identical. I'll swatch these 2 from Dior. Dior is going to be much more of a kind of sophisticated formula, if you will. By sophisticated, I mean kind of more traditional designer, a little bit more subtle. I guess I'll swatch some of these shades as well. So this is the kind of silver. You can see how chunky these are. I mean, they can have a lot of impact. They do kind of build up a lot. All right, and for the more purpley shades, I'll swatch, yeah, these ones. Those 2 from Pat McGrath. I mean, they're very pretty colors. Won't deny that. From the Anastasia, we have this purple and this more pink shade. I already did some dedicated comparisons between the Anastasia and the Charlotte Tilbury, but let's see those again. And then finally, Dior. Go ahead and swatch this one as well. So yeah, much less kind of reflect from the Dior. So yeah, so I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any other kind of specific comparison requests, and I can pop those up either on the community page on YouTube or on my Instagram. Okay, so I'm starting by applying the Fenty eye primer and then just blending that in with my fingers and setting the primer with my Charlotte Tilbury powder. And then with a Sonia G Classic Crease, I'm starting with that mid-tone matte brown shade called Sunkissed Rose, I believe. So just kind of creating a base for the shape of the eye look, taking it into the crease, creating a little bit of an angle at the outer edges, and really taking my time to blend that and get it to where I want it to be. And then taking a Sonia G Mini Booster, I am taking a darker matte brown. This one is called Sable Seductress. So just adding a little bit more depth, following the same basic shape, and continuing to blend, making sure I get kind of even pigmentation. And then going back into that first shade with the Classic Crease again, just to kind of get the most diffused blend. I find that really what sets a good eye look apart from a bad one is just the amount of time you take to blend out your shadows. So then I'm going in, I think I used a rougher 28, and this is the shade Bordeaux Brilliance. And this, as you can probably see, it sticks to the eyelid quite a bit. So you are able to get it to adhere to the eyelid, but it doesn't really want to blend out very well, so you end up kind of packing it on. But if you do like a more kind of foiled metallic shadow, then you might enjoy this formula. I'll talk a little bit more about my thoughts and the wear later on in the video. But yeah, just applying that to the outer 2/3 of the eyelid, I would say, and making sure that's even, and then going in with the shade Stardust Peony on the same brush. And this shade ended up looking a little bit more kind of neon peach than I really wanted it to. So I'm just taking that from the inner corner and blending it over the Bordeaux Brilliance shade. So just trying to get kind of even color payoff on both lids. And when I'm happy with that, I took a little bit of Honey Nectar and tapped it on over those other shades, in part because I wanted to change the shade a bit. But if I were reaching for any products in my collection, I probably would have reached for like an Urban Decay Moon Dust, just to give it a little bit more dimension on top of those metallic shades. And then to finalize the look, I took the original matte brown shade again called Sunkissed Rose and put that underneath the lower lash line with a Sonia G flat definer, just to give it a little bit more of an even look and to help prevent my concealer from creasing. All right, so now that you've seen this palette in action and up close and personal, I'll tell you kind of what I think about it. So full retail, this goes for $76. Definitely would not recommend paying that much for it. I find it really interesting that this palette is sold out on the Sephora website. I don't know if that's because they have another 20% off sale going. You can get it for an even better deal though on the Pat McGrath website, where it is still in stock last I checked. So with the, I think, 30% off that you can get at Pat McGrath, that would bring it down to $53.20. And if you spend over $150, you get 35% off. And if you spend over $250, you can get 40% off. So if you are interested in this palette, definitely recommend buying it on a deal. I think it's interesting or noteworthy that this was last year's holiday palette. This was the Celestial Nirvana. This was on the Sephora website. I don't know if it's in store anywhere still, but this popped back up for $25. So yeah, I would definitely recommend not paying 70, what did I say, 76. Obviously paying closer to $25 is always going to be better. I think $50-ish is a fair enough price for like a 15 pan eyeshadow palette. This one you got even more shades. I guess you got 18 as opposed to 15. I do like how she changed the packaging though for this year's palette. So you can see last year it had these kind of ribbon things that would hold the mirror at an angle if you were to let go of it. And then it had like a cardboard backing. So I was not the biggest fan of that design. This year's it is going to be a little bit smaller. You are getting fewer shades. So that is kind of how it looks lined up there. It'll focus. So there's that. As far as the design, I mean, they all kind of look the same after a few years. So that's the inside, and you do get the plastic backing this year. I just think it makes it look a little bit high-end, and I like that she got rid of the ribbons because, I don't know, I find it easy enough to just kind of hold like this, and the ribbons would kind of get in the way or whatever. I mean, you could cut them, but anyway. And this palette, I forget how much this one retailed for full price. You get 16 grams in this palette versus 22.7 grams in last year's palette. So you are getting less product. I think the trend is towards smaller palettes anyway, so is anyone going to miss the additional 3 shades? Probably not. And both of these were made in Italy. This one does have a shorter shelf life, 12 months versus 18 for last year's. So that's just some general information about the 2 holiday palettes from recent years. It's interesting that she is also putting a lot of her motherships on sale. So I have this Bronze Seduction was down to $77. These are going to be, I guess, permanent palettes, but who knows how long they'll stick around. She didn't do a mothership palette this year, so I don't know if they're just not selling as well as they used to. But yeah, the Bronze Seduction was $77. So this one was one of the more neutral ones. Also, Utopian Dream, which is one I don't have that I thought about picking up, but I guess I was too slow because it is now sold out on the website at least. But yeah, if you can find that one. And then the Classic Divine Rose was also down to $77. And I had actually picked up her first, this was Divine Rose, her first mothership palette went down to around $66 at the tail end of the most recent Sephora sale. So not the current one, but the tiered one. So I picked this one up. I don't reach into these palettes that often, in part because when you have them just in this packaging by themselves, they're kind of difficult to tell apart. But yeah, I wanted to kind of pick this one up as a cooler toned option. And as much as I kind of enjoy the packaging and everything, it just takes that much longer to kind of get into. One palette, this one also might have gone on sale, but I've had it for a while now. This is the, which one are you? Midnight Sun. And I think I recall creating a really pretty holiday look with this palette a few years ago. So to the extent you wanted some kind of holiday shades from Pat McGrath and you wanted a little bit more of her kind of special formulas and a little bit more of her high-end packaging, this one had, you know, the green, gold, kind of a rusty matte. So you can definitely get some holiday looks out of this, even though it's not as like primary color, green and red and that kind of thing. So I just bring those up by way of kind of what other options there are from Pat McGrath if you wanted to spend this kind of money on a palette. The thing about the motherships, especially the earlier ones that everyone kind of went crazy for, were those like special shades. So the kind of more celestial toppers. So this one would be Astral Solstice here in the corner. Generally it was like the last 4 in the palette, like that little quad. And these are kind of the more baked formulation. And I think honestly, Pat McGrath was a little kind of ahead of her time maybe in these types of shades. And that's why, again, at the time, like everyone kind of went crazy for them. The thing about these holiday palettes is that they are nice formulas, but they're not kind of the special formulas. So as I was applying this palette earlier today, I kind of felt like if I'd gotten this palette in my hands, I don't know, 5 years ago or whatever, I would have been much more impressed with it than I was today. The mattes were nice. One thing that I thought was a little bit surprising was the mattes weren't quite as impactful, maybe, as I had experience with Pat McGrath shadows in the past. That's one thing that honestly I did not love about other Pat McGrath formulations, is that it was just a little bit more difficult to blend on my skin tone. So I always had to be kind of in the right frame of mind to want to work with them, and it wouldn't be like a quick everyday look. It would be a little bit more of like a sit down kind of look. The metallics are nice. Again, they're, as you'll probably see in the swatches, they're on the thicker side. So they're a more kind of traditional metallic formula in that way. And I'll talk about the wear in a second, but yeah, if you like a kind of thicker metallic formula, I think you'll like these. It's just not where I think the market is right now. In general, I just don't know what Pat McGrath as a brand, I don't know what their direction is. I think they really kind of came out of the gate swinging, if that's the phrase. Like they really made a splash when they first launched. But I think they haven't really found their footing. I think since Pat McGrath maybe took on some other investors or outside funding, like they were really trying to push more mainstream commercial products. And it's interesting because, and this is just speculation, but Charlotte Tilbury, I think, has continued to do very well, and no one would say that her makeup looks or aesthetic are really that revolutionary, but I think she's kind of stayed true to the original kind of DNA, if you will, of the brand, which is that kind of Hollywood glamour look. So no one is looking for really crazy avant-garde makeup from Charlotte Tilbury versus like Pat McGrath is. So like the Maison Margiela fashion show, where it kind of went viral in that glass skin doll look, I know she's developing a product for the consumer that is supposed to replicate that in some way. I'm not sure what that product is necessarily, but yeah, she hasn't been able to kind of translate her makeup artistry to her products in a way that I think most people find very exciting. So that being said, it is sold out on Sephora. So I don't know if they just didn't have that much stock or what, but you know, some people have bought it. And there are some more colorful shades in here that I didn't really play around with. But going back to what I was saying about the formula. So unfortunately, I did experience quite a bit of creasing, and I think that has to do with the texture of the formula being thicker. And I do have hooded lids, so I set my lids with the Fenty primer, and then I set that primer with the Charlotte Tilbury powder, which is typically how I prepare my eyelids. So I think the nature of this formula, and this could just be, again, because I am, as we all are, getting older, so my current preferences might be a little bit different than they were, say, 5 years ago. And my tastes and what works on my eyelids, that kind of thing. So I don't think this texture is necessarily the most kind of mature skin friendly, in that it does exacerbate texture on your eyelids a little bit, especially when you first apply it. After a few hours, it kind of maybe mellowed out a bit, but then I do have that creasing. So again, if you're going to spend this kind of money on an eyeshadow palette, this isn't the one that I would recommend. If you are able to get a very good deal on it, especially if it comes back next year for like $25 and it looks fun to you, you like the shades, then, you know, go at it. But if you, again, are going to spend that kind of money, I would probably recommend a Natasha Denona palette over it, like the I Need a Nude, I Need a Warm, the Glam palette. If you are interested in those like more icy, colorful shades, maybe take a look at the Anastasia palette. But yeah, I wouldn't say this is anywhere near like my top palette of the year. If I lost it, I wouldn't be totally heartbroken. I mean, I don't regret buying it necessarily because, you know, I like trying new things and that kind of thing. But yeah, if you were thinking about asking for this for Christmas or giving it to someone else, I don't know, just maybe take a beat and think about it and think about what you like in formulations and what you'll get the most use out of and that kind of thing. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for my next palette review, I guess, at this point. So that's gonna do it. I hope you guys are all doing well and staying safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.